Steve from Florida wants to respond to the cold open about hateful jokes. So I'll let Sofia kind of take the lead on this one. But Steve, welcome back to Talk Heathen. What is your topic today?
Thank you for having me back, and you are correct. This is the same Steve.
Awesome. Good to hear from you. Well, what's your topic today?
Well, first I wanted to make sure Sofia, doesn't conflate jokes with hate. A lot of times,
tell me about that.
You can see a lot of comedians of all races making jokes about all different things, and even the people of that group will laugh at it because they all understand it's a joke. So really, if you want to, you really should probably differentiate jokes from hate. I mean, if it's a hateful joke, you have a...
What makes you think I don't? Is it possible to have a hateful joke? And is it possible that's what I was talking about? Not just every joke that touches on race or sex or anything like that.
Well, then just make sure you clarify it a lot more.
Wait, so you think I should have said, I should have talked about how some jokes are hateful, and I should have stopped and said, but I do know that not all jokes are hateful and that it can be okay and that there's even people within those. That's what the cold open should have included?
Yes, because you kind of implied that all jokes based on, whatever genders and race and all that could be hate automatically.
I think that was something you inferred from it, but I don't think I implied that. I listen to a lot of what would be considered edgy jokes, but I think a lot of the difference between whether or not it's hate or whether it's just a potentially edgy joke is really in how it's gone about and who's the punchline and how it's told and is it dehumanizing. So I feel like it's kind of an interesting thing here for you to call it and just, okay, so can you give me an example of a hateful versus a non-hateful joke then?
Well, the whole thing is like in this modern society now, they want to ban all sorts of jokes and anything derogatory towards anybody, regardless if it's a joke or not.
So it's not is that true, Steve?
Who's doing that?
Yeah.
Who's doing that? Can you tell me?
Well, mostly white women on the far left.
Okay. So
Steve,
wait,
do you know what
a group of white women, the international group of mean white women are doing this to you? Wait, what's happening? Where are they?
Yeah, see,
I want to join.
See, there you go. Mean white women, yes. It's just
okay.
Steve, do you know what punching down is? Do you know the concept of punching down?
No, but you're going to feed into a lot of atheists that just see this kind of stuff as
hate. No. So here's one of the big differences. And so not all jokes are hateful, but there is a tactful way to tell the jokes, like Sofia was saying. And a big difference, especially if you're going to make fun of a marginalized group of people, if you are coming from a position of privilege, that's where it's probably not okay to make that joke. Like let's say if you, and this is why we'll kind of sometimes have jokes about like cis het white men, and it seems like it's kind of hateful. But in that case, the cis het white man, at least in America, is in a majority class, is in a position of social privilege, to where making a joke like that is not going to cause social harm to that person. Like that person's not going to lose their job because someone made a joke about them. That person's not going to lose their family, lose their friends because of a joke that was made about them. The difference is when you make a joke based on a stereotype coming from a position of privilege and making a joke about someone who does not have that position of privilege, it can influence their lives outside of the joke. Like if you make jokes about trans people being groomers, that is a joke that can actually harm people. And like that has done that. That has caused trans people to lose their jobs and to lose rights and to lose like societal privileges, right? So same thing with jokes related to race and ethnicity and nationality. And even it does even get into like religious humor. I would argue that in a lot of cases, it's inappropriate to make jokes about Muslims in America because they are a marginalized community. So you can comment on the religion and certain practices. You can say, I don't agree with this particular thing that is oppressive, but making a joke about Muslims, like to bash their culture bash their people, that is problematic. And that is a hateful joke. So there's a difference with who you're trying to attack with the joke. And that's where the phrase punching down is when somebody in a position of privilege jokes about a community that does not have that same amount of privilege and uses that joke to disparage them. Does that kind of make sense where the line is?
Well, you just kind of made my argument where you said all white people making jokes about everybody else because they're in a...
No, I use that as an example. I use that as an example because a person from a position of a marginalized community, that would be punching up, right? You are making a joke about somebody in a position of power. You're not making a joke because of the fact that, like, you're not making the joke because of their skin color. You're not making the joke because of their anatomical features, whatever. You're making the joke because of their social status. You're making the joke about their privilege. So to say that, like, making a joke about like cis het white men not understanding people in marginalized communities, that is a joke punching up because it's social commentary. It's saying that this is a problem in our society with them having privilege that nobody else would get just because of like a racial status.
Well,
so that's different than punching down.
You're still proving my point. You're just classifying.
What is your point? I still don't.
As privilege.
Yeah,
okay, hold on. Yeah. I still don't get. You're saying you're proving my point, and your initial statement was you wanted to be sure I knew the difference between hate and a joke. And so, what is your point? Like, teach me.
Well, Dr. Ben there is classifying all straight white men as privileged. Therefore, they can't make any jokes about anybody down below.
I don't think that was at all
not what I said.
Dr. Ben said. And so it's interesting because, oh, sorry.
No, but yeah, it's not what I said. I said, like, in general, like, that is an example of a people group it's less likely appropriate for them to make a joke about another group of people because, and it's not the case in every country. Like, there are other countries where, if you're like somewhere where cis het white people are not the majority, and if there was a case where they were having a loss of social status or a loss of social privilege because of any of those categories, then that would be the same thing where it would be inappropriate to make jokes about them.
So I can give if you're done.
No, you go
first. I have
a
particular example. Okay, yes. Oh, I have a particular example that might be illuminative. I'm going to call them grape jokes for the sake of YouTube. I have heard funny and non-funny jokes about grape. It's something that can be amusing when told with sensitivity and with the thoughtfulness of the fact that there's actually a victim on this end. So I heard a comic say something once about how, grapists and pirates have a lot in common. They take what isn't theirs. They feel entitled to a lot, and sometimes their names are Dave. And it was a joke about her personal experience in this situation. And it was a joke at the expense of a white dude in this instance. If there was a white dude telling a joke about sexual assault or grape, and the person who was sort of the victim of the joke, it wasn't talking about their own personal experience, but it was talking about a woman who had experienced this grape, I think that we see there's a large difference in status. In general, women tend to be the ones who would be the victim of sexual assault, and men tend to often be the victimizers more often than not. So it seems more palatable to us, and rightfully so, that one of these folks can make a joke about grape and the other one can't. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily hateful toward white men to tell a joke in this way, but I also think that it's something to bear in mind when we're making these jokes. So if I'm sitting around in a group of white men, like in my story was the case, white men and me, and there's no person there who is a representative in any way of any person they were making fun of. And it was making fun of them in a dehumanizing way that was taking stereotypes and just sitting together and laughing about them as though they believed them because there's a grain of truth in a joke, right? I find that pretty gross. So, like, I'm curious, how do you deal with, like, let's go with the example of like a rape joke. How do you, oh, sorry, I said it wrong for YouTube. But like, what is your take on that? That's a more concrete example.
Well, right now, the only thing that comes to my mind is Dr. Ben was classifying the privileged and the underprivileged. So he's basically saying all white men can't make jokes to anybody.
So you're dodging the question and saying you said something that he didn't say. So I asked you a specific question here, and you just went back to mischaracterizing what Dr. Ben said. And it's interesting because I feel like you also mischaracterized what I said at the beginning and in the cold open. I never said that all jokes that include any of this are hateful. I never said anything like that. And you seem to kind of be taking everything really personally. And so I'm curious, like, where's that coming from?
And because he's using privilege all the time to classify upper class and lower class. So he's actually making.
I don't think that's upper class and lower class.
But it's setting a context. It's setting a context for what the commentary is. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference. Somebody who is not really at all impacted by some of those issues, but is just perpetuating stereotypes and sitting back and laughing at other people's expense, in that, like, laughing at people who are poor, laughing at people who don't have access to healthcare, laughing at people who are presumed to be criminals when they're not, just because of a racial background that they have. Like, that is kind of lacking tact. It's something that, like, why are you going out of your way to make fun of somebody who's in a worse position than you? Like, and that's where it's coming from. It's like, you just have to think about, is this joke tactful? Is this, like, what purpose is this joke serving? And the fact that you're not able to distinguish that is a little bit concerning to me. Like, and even as somebody in like a minority group, like, I will make so many kind of I guess, like, I'll make a lot of jokes about trans people and about LGBTQ people that to other people might sound very harsh and might sound very dark, but, like, that's the community I come from. And so for me, it's not a problem for me to say those jokes. I will choose the audience that I'm saying those in front of. Like, I'm not going to say a lot of those jokes in front of people who are not part of that community, because it is also lacking tact in that sense. But me in a community with all LGBTQ people, it's going to be received a bit better. And so it's the way you approach any conversation. Like, if this community that you're in, if you're telling the joke among a certain group, you have to think, is this productive to say? Is the message that I'm trying to communicate going to be received in the way that I'm intending it? Or could this be easily misconstrued? And, like, that's what we have to think about. And oftentimes issues regarding minority groups, like, there's a lot of depth and a lot of context that people who are not part of that community might not understand to the fullest extent. So that's where you have to be really cautious. And it's not saying that people outside those groups, like, can't comment on things related to that community, but you have to be very careful about how you do it and how you handle that. And it's worth talking to, like, if you have a friend, like an actual, like, close friend in that community, and you say, hey, like, is this joke tasteful or not? And if they say, you know, I wouldn't say that around my community, maybe don't say it. And even if you think, like, if you're questioning whether or not you should say that joke around that community, maybe just don't say it. It's more of not, like, people not knowing the baggage that something carries, and then just saying, you know, I'm fine saying this, and not caring what that joke is going to do to that other person. So I think that, Steve, I think you're smart enough to understand social context, and like you understand that there are times to act professional and there are times to not act professional, right? Like, would you wear the same clothes to sure, like a big, like, formal business dinner that you would, like, just going to the park with your dog? Or is there a difference of how you act in each of those places?
Well, it's fine. I mean, as all jokes, they're only funny or something like that when they have a grain of truth in them. So you know. Yeah,
but the whole you're dodging things again. I'm asking you questions about context. You understand that there are contexts for different things, and there's behavior that's appropriate in different settings, right?
Sure, there is.
And there's also within that context, there's different ways that are differently appropriate for different people, right? Like at a wedding, it's appropriate for the bride to wear a white dress. And our society has said it's not really appropriate for other people to show up wearing a white dress. Like there's nothing inherently wrong about wearing a white dress, but the context, like in that context, it is disrespectful for someone to wear a white dress and appear like they're the bride in somebody else's wedding. Like that's just kind of, you just feel kind of icky about it. It's like, maybe this is a little bit disrespectful. That's kind of a similar thing with these jokes. There's a time and a place. There's a person to where it is appropriate for them to make that comment and maybe not as appropriate for someone else. And I think, Steve, that you understand social context. I think you understand some of this nuance. And it seems maybe you feel like you want to be able to say these things and you don't want to feel guilt about it, which tells me a little bit about.
They're jokes. There's jokes.
So wait,
no hate behind a lot of them.
You just said that there's a grain of truth in the jokes. Isn't it possible that some folks find these jokes funny because they want to actually be racist and sexist? And so they're saying these things that they actually believe, but they're doing it in a joking way so they can act like I'm crazy and say they just made a joke.
So they don't get social repercussions for it.
There's always a grain of truth in jokes, and that's what makes them funny. There's a certain amount of truth in them, and if you're offended, that's on you, not on the other listeners.
So wait, I didn't say
someone's
anything
racist
about the other listeners. Hold on. If I say that you're a bag of dicks and you're offended, then is that just on you? Like, that seems like it would be something I'm intentionally saying to be mean. It's inflammatory.
I'm not a bag.
Maybe it has a grain of truth to it. But if somebody laughed at that, like, are you mad at them?
No, because I'm not a bag of dicks.
Steve, is it okay to make racist jokes?
But someone thought because they laughed because they thought you were. So is that offensive? Or is that okay that they laughed because they agreed that you were a bag of dicks?
Well, it's fine to make jokes if you're stereotyping a whole group or something like that, or there's a great. The thing is my big distinction is the hate.
Steve, is it okay? Is it okay to make racist jokes, like where their race is the punchline? How about okay?
All white men in Florida are bags of dicks. Is that offensive?
Sure, it's fine to make racist jokes if there's no hate about it.
Okay, but how would you tell? Do I need to stop and ask someone making the joke? Do you actually feel hate, or is this just a joke?
Well, that's like...
Where do you draw the line? Like, where is your line? Have you ever heard a joke like this and you've been like, actually, that's too much?
I watch a lot of comedians on the YouTube all the time that are making all sorts of racist jokes, and in the context and the place.
So, Steve, I don't know if we find the same things funny.
Answer my question here, though. Have you ever heard a joke and thought, no, actually, that's too much? Because if you have no standards, if you have no line at all, then anyone taking offense ever or saying something is wrong to joke about, then of course you're going to think they're wrong. But then there's no point in convincing you or trying to convince you because you have no standards. So have you ever thought a joke went too far? Can you tell me about a time like that?
You're always going to make a joke and offend somebody, usually.
That's not what I asked. You personally. Steve, the bag of dicks are not from Florida. Have you been offended by a joke before?
That makes it funny.
Wait, I'm sorry. What is this uncomfortable laugh about? I'm confused. Can you answer my question?
Steve, the bag of dicks from Florida. That was funny.
Steve, the interesting
bumper sticker, man.
The interesting thing is that you find it offensive when I say something about cishet white men, but then you come back and you say that it's okay to make racist jokes. I think that you're just personally offended, and you're not willing to admit that you're personally offending other people, and that you're okay with being racist and just telling jokes about it. I think we're probably done with this call because you know what? Like, I have zero tolerance for racism or anything similar to racism. Like, we do not tolerate that here. And you are, like, Steve, if you make jokes like that and you think that is okay, you are a bag of dicks. Like, that is just fact.